Hello all of you little demons, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, back again with another episode of the awesomely named and awfully hosted Choose Your Own Adventure, the weekly medieval themed format where I, the crown jewels of WhatCulture.com, take a list chosen by you. Yes, you, the person who is drinking coffee out of Scott Tailford's head and he loves it. Yes, you get to decide what list I dole out to you each and every week. And this week we have, hold on, I've got to grab my kazoo. I don't know why I don't keep it on hand. This week we have none other to thank than that random guy. A very random indeed. For their suggestion of video game skills and abilities that you instantly regretted purchasing. And here's the thing, when it comes to video games, there's very few things that we gamers like more, apart from maybe complaining about the state of the industry, than a good video game power-up or ability. With these bespoke powers, you can take lowly bottom-feeding heroes and turn them into megalodons, especially if some of those unlockables straight up break the game with their overpowered nature. However, that's the topic for another list, as today we're looking at the inverse of video game skills that left you utterly baffled as to why A, you had to pay for them in the first place, and B, whether or not they're even worth it, as their impact on the game was so minimal or sometimes detrimental to the overall experience. A duff skill can see players waste hours of their lives grinding for the resources to unlock it and curse the developers personally and at length if it means that their build has been ruined thanks to unforeseen effects tanking their playthrough. So buyer beware indeed as we take a look at these skills that were absolutely... But I'll put that into more words. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video game skills you wish you never bought. And you know the drill by now, say hi to me here in the live chat and put your suggestions for next week's video down in the comments section below. And by the way, here's a new bit for the intro here. Go check me out on the Future Games Show where I'll be doing extra gaming content every bloody Friday. How's that for a slice of fried gold, mate? Number 8, Cult of Personality, Fallout 2. In the original Fallout games, shaping your character build carefully is pretty much an essential skill in of itself. As with just a few wrong perk placements and bad points allocation, you could find yourself locked out of late game rewards, special quests, and of course simply just be shot to ribbons by weapons of which you have little to no resistance against. Why did I put all my points into bartering? Would you like some cheese? Therefore, when you pick a duff perk after all of that grinding, it stings worse than a rad scorpion to the eyeballs. And the Cult of Personality perk sure is a lethal dose of poison to those looking to survive the irradiated wastes. Now on paper, this perk actually seems pretty useful, as it's meant to allow the player access to conversations with NPCs who might otherwise hate them, thus allowing you to extract information, rewards, and entire quest lines that your actions may otherwise have seen you locked out of. Now, as it stands, that sounds incredible, right? I mean, you could be a psychotic murderer of the wasteland and then just go work with the lawbringers and get all of their loot. That's fantastic, except there's just one small teeny tiny problem. It doesn't work, like at all. Yeah, the perk is bugged, meaning that you'll be trying in vain to get people to speak to you, all the while potentially angering them further. Cult of Personality, well, this turns you into a bloody pariah. Number 7, Environmental Resistance, Deus Ex. Now I can imagine that there's a fair few people out there watching this video that are like, wait a minute, Jules, why are you talking about environmental resistance when clearly the absolute plum duff of all of the skills that you can buy in Deus Ex is the swimming perk, because it sucks. There's only ever like 2 or 3 sections that the swimming perk, being able to breathe underwater with the Aqualung mod, is actually useful. There's usually a rebreather right next to the sections that you need to go through that are underwater. So yeah, that's the worst one, right? Well... wrong, friend. And I say this because while the Aqualung perk absolutely sucks in that it takes up a slot on your build and does next to nothing that a rebreather can't accomplish, the Environmental Resistance perk requires several levels of upgrading in order to do the same as a basic item that you can find in the game. And remember, the hazmat suit is found near every single environmental hazard in the first bloody place. So let's walk through this one together, shall we? You pick the Environmental Resistance perk, you notice that you're still taking damage from all of the things that it should be protecting you against, so you level it up again, and then again, and you're left with something that is as good as a basic item found near every point where this perk would be useful. If you bought this, you were a fool. Number 6, the Scrapper perk. Cyberpunk 2077. Now, by now I think it's been pretty well documented that Cyberpunk's original state was one that needed some, let's just say, love and care. Well, let's just be honest, it needed to be razed to the ground on consoles and started from scratch, and let's not even get started on the prior generation of consoles, which honestly needed to be scrapped entirely. And speaking of scrapping, it turns out that in the game there was one perk that actually let you do that, but unfortunately was rendered absolutely useless because of the fact that it was a little too good at its own job. You see, the perk is designed to automatically break down items marked as junk in your inventory, which in theory would save the player a ton of time, as normally they'd have to go into their backpack and break things down individually, which quickly racks up time. However, there was a slight oversight with just what was deemed junk by the perk at the time of launch, as it would read jewelry, precious gems, and otherwise very expensive items that would be excellent for selling as items, and broke them down into their basic components. Fancy fencing that precious pearl necklace that you've just looted off of a corpse? Well, tough, because the scrapper perk has turned that into 2 common items for you. Cheers. This was a perk that actually cost the player time to unlock, points to buy, and actual money as it broke down all of their valuables into lesser elements. Thankfully, this was fixed in patch 1.5, but for a while, players actively told others to avoid this perk like the plague, lest it take its Grim Reaper's scythe to anything valuable in their inventory. Number 5. Chest opening speed. One Piece World Seeker. Okay then, I think it's time to talk about World Seeker. I mean, this game, I really wanted to love. I mean, why wouldn't I? I'm a One Piece fan, and the idea of an open world One Piece game where you could go from continent to continent on the going merry, making friendships and having huge fights, I mean, that is what I want from a video game. But unfortunately, there's a reason that we're not holding this aloft to like Elden Ring or Tears of the Kingdom, and that is because it is just so down the middle average that it slipped below the waves of obscurity into nothingness. And it's not that it did anything particularly wrong, it's just so unremarkable for the most part that there wasn't any staying power for the Straw Hats this time around. That being said, I will most definitely roast this game for one specific reason, and that being its ridiculous inclusion of the open chests faster skill. Now, as you might expect in a game about pirates, treasure chests are rather abundant, and you'll eagerly approach them in order to ransack them, only to be met with a 25-second opening animation. Now, just for a bit of context, Dan is going to put 25 seconds on the clock, and I'm going to do something like, I don't know, drink this glass of water that's in front of me, and you will see how agonizingly long such an act will take. Dan, are you ready? For science, my friend. Here we go. Now imagine that every single time you want to open a chest. Bullshit. Now listen here, pal, if there's one thing I hate in video games outside of unskippable tutorials on New Game Plus modes, it's lengthy animations for no reason other than to make people pay to circumnavigate them. And that's exactly what the open chests faster skill does, cutting down that time so you can loot that little bit quicker. Oh, and by the way, I say a little bit quicker because level 1 of this perk only reduces that by 25%. You have to upgrade it again to get a 50% cut down. Why am I paying for this at all? I'm sorry, but what purpose does this actually serve other than to literally waste your time just so you can sell me a means to save me time? Annoyingly, it is a perk that you pretty much have to buy, but you'll spend every waking moment wishing you'd never had to. Number 4, Medical, Elder Scrolls Daggerfall. Now, healing in video games is always going to be an important factor that players need to consider, and as such, how you heal will be something you'll need to master quickly. Some games let you stand around and sweat the bullets right out of your spine after a quick cup of tea a la Call of Duty, others make you eat food from the trash bin like some hyper-aggressive tramp, and many old-school titles will have you patching your melted face up with some gauze and Scooby-Doo plasters, courtesy of a medipack or health kit. And then, of course, there's sleeping, which seems like the weirdest way to heal a wound in video games, especially when you've got, I don't know, like a broken arm or a serious head wound. In fact, the latter would be the worst thing that you could go and just have a rest on. I mean, if you're out there and you have a serious head trauma, don't go to sleep. That's pretty much rule 101, but here in video games, nah mate, 40 winks, clock into the Z factory, you'll be fine, you'll get a promotion. And also, it's very weird to think about hitting the hay right after a battle, which many video games do, especially when it's usually right next to the people that you've just killed. Still, moving away from this rather dark thought is the medical ability that you can invest points in within the Daggerfall Elder Scrolls experience. Now, this perk increases your healing rate when sleeping, so you can get back into battle a little quicker after a short snooze, which sounds great, right? Well, here's a question for you, Dan. Why does it matter how long it takes you to rest at all? I mean, there's like 3 timed missions in this entire game, so time is literally an arbitrary factor of the video game experience. I mean, it doesn't matter if you sleep for 4 hours or 4 days in this game. You'll end up being healed to 100%, so what is the point of the skill? It's like 3 missions, like I said. Do not buy this. Number 3, Dauntless, Hunt Showdown. Now, Hunt Showdown really is the little game that could, launching with the brilliant premise of a group of Wild West-era bounty hunters tracking down occult monsters before then trying to escape with the loot battle royale style. It quickly found an audience, even if the controls and gameplay in those early days definitely needed a ton of refinement. It basically had something for everyone, being part survival horror, part co-op game, and part zombie murder simulator. Unfortunately though, because of this kitchen sink style approach to gameplay, it did mean that there were a fair few skills that were utter floaters because they were just trying to cater for every playstyle, and of all of them, one especially sticks out as a rather stinky turd on a stick, and that is the Dauntless skill. Now, as per usual, this sounds great whilst spoken about in a vacuum, that with this skill the player can rush forward and defuse any explosive or support item that is thrown at them. And the benefits to this are obvious, as having a grenade arrive at your feet is always bad news, and choke bombs, they are the worst. So yeah, of course I'm going to look for any excuse not to be around them. But still, the Dauntless perk has just one problem attached to it, and that is the fact that it doesn't reset the timer on the explosives or support items when you pick them up, meaning that you're likely to pick up a TNT stick and just be like, oh, that was a bad idea. And this is because most opponents will cook their items before throwing them your way. Now, a lot of newcomers to the game may not be well versed in this practice, but any FPS gamer worth their salt will be doing this as second nature, meaning that the Dauntless skill really should be retitled as the free kill or lemming ability, as you're basically serving them up some tasty points on a plate as you charge towards their TNT, stare at it for 2 seconds, and then explode. Number 2, GRAUG Hunter, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. Now, of all of the frightening and strange creatures of Mordor, the GRAUG really are the most imposing. And I mean, when you're the size of at least 30 regulation-approved British sheds and can literally eat a cave troll for breakfast, there's little for this beast to worry about with regards to being top of the food chain. Yet, thanks to their massive size and rather humble intellect, they can actually be tamed and ridden by the player in Shadow of Mordor. Well, that is as long as they pay for the GRAUG Hunter skill that can be found within the game. Now, it's here you're probably thinking to yourselves, Jules, you Tesco branded Gollum, what the hell are you on about? Why wouldn't I want a perk or skill that allows me to ride this mighty beast into battle? I mean, that is almost as cool as finding a copy of The Hobbit that doesn't suck. I'm talking about the film version, and it does. Don't argue with me on this. Plus, any film that makes Sir Ian McKellen cry definitely sucks, alright? So, just saying that, right? And you know what? You're right, my furry-footed friends. This GRAUG Hunter skill is brilliant, unless that is that you're playing the game on the PS3 or the 360, where the creature has been removed entirely. Yes, that's right, these elusive beasts are a damn sight harder to find when they're not even programmed into the bloody game, having been cut for performance issues by the developers and not exactly clearly marketed as being removed. This led many players who were following guides based on the PS4 or Xbox One to be completely flummoxed as to why they couldn't track down these mighty beasts, especially seeing as the skill itself was still available for unlock. Imagine grinding for all of that time, going to every single location where they're meant to spawn and finding nothing. That truly is terrible. And number 1, combat shooting, Wasteland. And finally, we end on a skill so utterly useless and pointless that not even the original game's developer knows what it does. Say hello to the combat shooting skill from the cult classic and highly underrated first Wasteland game, which seems to have influenced the Fallout series' love of having useless skills by having the absolute king of them within their own title. Now what it does is, well, Precisely nothing. And when asked about what buffs this ability provided, Brian Fargo, the game's creator, responded with something along the lines of, "What the absolute living hell are you talking about, mate?" Now, broken skills aren't all that uncommon within video games thanks to the constant shuffle of code and conflicting departments all implementing their sections at once, but still, this one is particularly strange as it appears as a skill that you can choose on the character creation screen of the DOS version, meaning that it was clearly meant to be important, as after all, you're putting it front and center for the player to engage with straight away. So data miners and hackers started going through the game to try and find the answers as to what the hell combat shooting actually was meant to do. I mean, it's even perplexing to think about. I mean, aren't you shooting to be in combat in the first place? My mind is blown by this, but even more so when they found nothing. There was no hints as to what this could be. What are your secrets, combat shooting? What are you doing to me? Well, thankfully they fixed this in the following games, and even the remastered version of this did actually contain a little Easter egg based around the pointlessness of the combat shooting perk. Because it still did nothing, by the way, but if you selected it, you got an achievement. Brilliant. And there we go, my friends. Those were 8 video game skills you wish you'd never bought. I hope you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. And put your suggestions for next week's episode down there as well, my friends. Big love to all of you, and if you'd like to follow me over on the social medias, you can do so by going to @RetroJ, but the O is a 0 on both Instagram and Twitter, and you can follow Dan, the lovely Dan, over here. Big bless to him. Thank you very much for your editing skills, my man. Big love to you, my dude. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. I hope that you're treating yourself well, my friend, because there is actually one skill that we can all unlock right here today that definitely is worth the time and effort, and that is just being kind to yourself, all right? You deserve love, you deserve happiness, you deserve success. All of us do as human beings, all right? So treat yourself first with that love that you damn well deserve. You're a big ledge, all right? You deserve the best. And do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. I want you to go out there and smash your life goals today because I believe in you and you need to believe in yourself as well. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.